Hi there, my name is Jeff Sackmann. I run a website called GMAThacks.com. What I want to talk to you about today is the computer adaptive test. The GMAT is very different from other exams you may have taken, probably just about every other exam you've taken. The typical exam scenario is you sit down in a room with a bunch of other people, you get a test booklet, the test is on paper, you get a pencil, you fill in the multiple choice answers on a little bubble sheet, and at the end you're graded on the basis of how many you got right. Virtually none of those things are true on the GMAT. First of all, the GMAT is a computer adaptive test, or a CAT. The computer, the C, stands for computer. That means you're not taking it on paper, you're taking it on a computer. One of the benefits there is that unlike a test like the law school exam, the LSAT, you can take it pretty much anytime you want. You're not limited to 4 test dates per year. You can probably sign up for it any day of the week, depending on where you live, most any time of day, so you get a lot of flexibility. What that also means is, of course, you're sitting at a computer that gives the test maker a lot more power over what they show you. You don't necessarily get the same test as your friend who's preparing, or even the person sitting at the computer next to you taking the GMAT. So it's a computer test which may be new to you. The A in computer adaptive test stands for adaptive, and this is where it's very different. This is probably something that you've never come across before. What adaptive means is that the test adapts to your ability level. So imagine the SAT, which you might have taken back in high school. Everybody takes the same SAT. The easy questions are in the beginning, the medium questions come later, and at the very end are the hardest questions. No matter how good you are at the SAT, even if you get a perfect score, you get the same number of easy questions as the person sitting next to you. The GMAT is very different, and there's a lot of implications for how you should study, how you should approach the test that are based on this. So what this means is the GMAT is giving you questions depending on how well you're doing. One way this is popularly expressed is in a graph form. So let's imagine this axis as the questions on the test. The math section of the test, you get 75 minutes to answer 37 questions. So you're going to progress from question 1 all the way across to question 37. And if we think of this axis as percentiles, then you could be down here around the 1st or 2nd percentile, which wouldn't be very good, or you could be doing very well and be up in the 90th, 95th, 99th percentile. Obviously you want to be up here, but as we'll see in a moment, the GMAT makes you really work for it. So you sit down at a computer for the computer adaptive GMAT, and you're going to get a few questions that know nothing about you. The GMAT's basically pulling random questions out of a database to determine how good you are at this stuff. You might see a question that is in the middle, a medium level question. Maybe question number 2 comes down here a little bit, not so hard of a question. Question number 3 might bounce back here. So you're bouncing around quite a bit. Those first few questions are really a diagnostic test. The GMAT wants to take a minute and figure out how good are you at this stuff. Are you a good test taker? Can you do these questions quickly? Obviously it wants to know whether you're doing the questions accurately, and that's what you need to prove. So once it's gone through that little mini diagnostic test, the GMAT is going to make an estimate. The computer is taking the information it has about you and is going to estimate and think, this person taking the test, maybe it's a 60th percentile score. Maybe you got these 2 right, but then you got this one wrong. So based on that, it's going to decide, okay, 60th percentile, maybe question 4 is right in here. So it's making an estimate. It's now going to test that estimate. It's going to give you a 60th percentile test item, and depending on how you do on that, it's going to make a new estimate. So let's say you get this one right, the next one, maybe it gives you one a little harder, a 70th percentile test item. Again, the sequence keeps going along these same rules. If you get them right, you see harder questions. If you get them wrong, you see easier questions. With every question you do, you're giving the GMAT more information. You're giving it more data to base that estimate on. So by the end of the test, maybe you've gotten a few wrong in a row, you've gotten a couple right, you got another wrong. Ultimately, you start zigzagging at some level because the GMAT's making a pretty good estimate, and you get to the end, and let's say this is the 67th percentile. So depending on where you are at the end, that's your score, the 67th percentile. In another video, I'll talk about what exactly those percentiles mean and how those factor into your score, whether that means a 550 or a 650, or how that influences the number that it spits out at the end. But for now, Let's just focus on that number. Notice one important thing here. That 67th percentile could be achieved a number of different ways. All it really is based on is where you are right here. It doesn't matter where you are here at maybe question 23 or here at question 15. You could go up for a while and go down. You could go down for a while and go up. You could immediately establish yourself between the 65th and 70th percentiles and just zigzag, one right, one wrong, one right, one wrong, all the way to the end. It doesn't matter. If you end here and somebody else ends there, it doesn't matter whether you got more right, they got more right. Think of it as a ladder. It doesn't matter whether you climb up and climb down. It doesn't matter whether you very slowly climb up. All that matters is where you are at the end. That's what you're getting graded based on. So that's your score. As I mentioned before, this has a lot of implications for strategy. First of all, it doesn't really matter how you do on any given question. Obviously, given the choice, you'd rather get it right than get it wrong. But notice that the 67th percentile, a pretty solid score, one that I'm sure a lot of you will be very happy with on the math section. There's a lot of little downticks in here. You can get a lot of questions wrong. You can get an 80th, maybe even a 90th percentile math score, getting 10, maybe 12 questions wrong. Now, that still means you have to get a lot of questions right, but you certainly don't have to ace the exam. I've never sat for the test and gotten 37 out of 37, and I've certainly been happy with the scores I go home with. Virtually no one gets 37 out of 37. Now, one thing that's related to is the importance of getting to the end of the exam. One thing that many inexperienced GMAT test takers do wrong is they spend too much time on early questions. So they think it's really important, instead of just zigzagging, to get this one right, to get this one right, to get this one right, and then question 27 comes along and they look at the clock, they panic, they have 1 minute left, they click through the end of the exam, and you can guess what happens. That's if they even make it to the end of the exam at all. One thing, again, a lot of inexperienced test takers don't know about the GMAT is that the GMAT really values your time management. It wants you to finish the exam. I mean, think about what this is really predictive of. They're trying to predict your success in business school, your success in a managerial career. Time management's a really big part of that. They don't want somebody who does the first half of the task really well and then just ignores the last half. Imagine if you did that at your day job. I don't think you'd succeed very well there. And that's what the GMAT's looking for. So let's say that person we're talking about really puts a lot of emphasis on those earlier questions, crashes and burns, doesn't even make it to the end of the test. If they don't make it to the end of the test, there's a penalty just for not making it to the end of the test. The makers of the GMAT don't disclose exactly how big that penalty is, but you're definitely going to get hit 5 or 10 percentile points. It's not good. Don't do it. Even if you race through those last few questions, your score is going to fall a lot. There may even be a penalty for racing through those final questions. Don't mess around with that. It's much smarter to pace yourself from the very beginning, make sure you're spending about 2 minutes per question, and give yourself plenty of time to get to the end. If you remember you're going to get some questions wrong, guessing on questions, moving through them quickly, even if you're not 100% sure you're right, that's worth a lot more than spending a lot of time perfecting question number 7, maybe, and then missing out on a few of these questions at the end. So there are some of the basics of the computer adaptive exam. I was specifically talking about the math section here with 75 minutes and 37 questions, but a lot of these same principles, in fact most of these same principles, apply to the verbal section as well. Many students aren't as concerned about time management on the verbal section, but the same rules apply. The test is adaptive. If you're doing well on some reading comprehension questions, you're going to see a tougher critical reasoning question. If you do poorly, you're going to see easier ones. Even within a reading comprehension passage with maybe 4 to 6 questions, if you do well on the first couple questions, the third question that comes with that passage is going to be a little harder. So it's adaptive in the same way. It's important to finish the section. And again, it doesn't matter exactly how many you get right. It matters where you are at the end. That's what your results are based on. So think about that when you're studying. Think about that as you approach the test. It's all about time management. If you go to my website, gmathhacks.com, I have a lot of articles in the computer adaptive test section, and you'll see that a lot of them deal with time management. In fact, a lot of my study tips deal with time management as well, because as I say, that's the core of the test. So hopefully this has given you a better understanding of what you're up against, and you can use that in your preparation and turn it into a higher score. Thanks for watching.